Agrippina sat by her husband's bedside, her heart heavy as she looked at Germanicus. He lay pale and weakened, the bed soaked with sweat stains. Fear clawed at her. Each shallow breath he took was a reminder of the fragility of life, and the thought of losing him threatened to overwhelm her. When Germanicus had first fallen ill, following his return from Armenia, word had quickly spread. Gaius Silius, the commander of her husband's Rhine legions, had dropped everything to make the journey to Syria, as did Quintus Veranius, the governor of Cappadocia appointed by Germanicus. Along with Aulus Cecina Severus, Vibius Marsus, Gaius Sentius Saturninus, and brothers Lucius and Publius Vitellius, Silius and Veranius stood vigil, as Germanicus's health continued to deteriorate. These men were not just her husband's comrades in arms, they were witnesses to his life and his legacy. In Rome, the news struck like a lightning bolt. Crowds flooded the temples day and night, begging the gods for mercy. Agrippina heard that in their desperation, some had trampled the temple gates to pray for Germanicus's recovery. To the people of Rome, Germanicus, their brave general, was a beacon of hope and a figure of honor, who, unlike others, was destined to restore Rome's glory. Following his triumph, Agrippina's husband had agreed to journey east, abandoning the protection of his Rhine legions in order to make sure that Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso did not drag Rome into a costly war against Parthia. He did so at Tiberius's request. Out of filial duty to his father, Germanicus accomplished everything Tiberius desired. Armenia was given a new king, Artaxius, while King Artabanus of Parthia, no longer threatened, returned to his capital. War was successfully averted. But because Germanicus went into Egypt to relieve the famine that plagued its people, Tiberius openly criticized him in the Senate. Then Germanicus became sick. The symptoms came on suddenly. Germanicus could keep nothing down. He slept through the days, waking intermittently in a feverish sweat. Like any dutiful wife, Agrippina took immediate charge of her husband's health. Since Piso and Plancina were suspected of having him poisoned, Agrippina took it upon herself to prepare every meal, ensuring no hands but her own had touched her husband's food or his drink. Agrippina's mind raced with questions, yet her thoughts settled on a single burning suspicion. Piso had sought to cripple Germanicus's influence long before any poison had touched his lips. As Germanicus held the higher imperium, he had commanded Piso to send 2 legions to support the transfer of power from King Vonones to the new King Artaxius. But Piso had brazenly ignored him, casting aside Germanicus's authority. Did the governor of Syria hope that, abandoned and unprotected, Germanicus would be cut down in the coming clash between Armenia and Parthia? And then what? Would Piso's ambition extend even to Tiberius himself? Perhaps in his delusions he already saw himself seated as emperor. For that possibility alone, Piso and Plancina could not remain in the province. With Germanicus slipping in and out of consciousness, Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso was the last man who should hold command of Syria's legions he'd brought to heel with bribery and lax discipline, eroding the very order Germanicus represented. And so, during one of his lucid moments, Germanicus gave the order. Piso and his wife, Plancina, were to be expelled from Rome's Syrian province, immediately. With their removal, and Agrippina's vigilant care, Germanicus finally seemed to rally, even showing flashes of his former strength. But his recovery, brief and uncertain, would not hold. The relapse came swiftly. One moment, Germanicus was up and about, pacing himself with light administrative work, the spark of his former vigour igniting hope in Agrippina's heart. Then, in an instant, he was back in bed, pale and drenched in sweat, that flicker of renewed vigour extinguished as quickly as it had appeared. The return of Germanicus's illness felt like a betrayal, a cruel twist mocking her tireless care. Agrippina sat by his side, her hands trembling as she searched his fading warmth. This was no ordinary sickness. Something unseen, something lurking in the shadows, was working its dark magic on her husband. There was a foulness in the air, a scent of decay mingled with the stale bitterness of medicinal herbs. Determined to uncover the truth, Agrippina ordered a search of the palace grounds. Hidden beneath the floors, the guards unearthed human remains in various stages of decay. Bones, untouched by flame, lay alongside ashes congealed with blood. Scattered among them were leaden curse tablets, each inscribed with the name Germanicus. Accompanying these findings were spells and incantations, crafted to forever bind his spirit to the dark realms of the underworld. Agrippina's worst fears were confirmed. Piso and Plancina had not only resorted to poison, but had also engaged in unholy sacrificial rites, entwining their malice with dark sorcery. Yet, despite Piso and Plancina's participation in the art of witchcraft, Germanicus remained resolute. Even as life slipped away, Agrippina's husband made final decisions to safeguard the security of Rome's Syrian province. Propped up on his pillow, the fevered sweat glistening on his damp hair, Germanicus gathered his staff around him. Holding a brief discussion with both Vibius Marsus and Gaius Sentius Saturninus, former consuls with the experience necessary to govern a province, it was decided that Sentius would serve as Syria's governor until Tiberius confirmed or appointed a replacement. Vibius Marsus, along with Lucius Vitellius, would escort Agrippina and Germanicus's ashes back to Rome. However, before Germanicus drew his last breath, there was still work to be done. He charged both Publius Vitellius and Quintus Veranius to investigate further, beyond the boundaries of the Daphne Palace. The two men ventured into Antioch, where they continued their search at the governor's mansion, uncovering equally gruesome signs of sorcery. Upon questioning the staff, Vitellius and Veranius learned that Piso's wife, Plancina, had recently made a new acquaintance. On more than one occasion, a Syrian woman, who was notorious for her poison-making, had visited the mansion. Her name was Martina. When Vitellius and Veranius dispatched soldiers to find the poisoner, a surge of vindication coursed through Agrippina. Martina was swiftly apprehended, her fear palpable as she remained under heavy guard. This woman held the key to unravelling the treachery against Agrippina's husband. When she returned to Rome, Martina would accompany Agrippina, not just as a prisoner, but as a crucial witness in the charges Agrippina planned to bring against Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso and Munatia Plancina. The death of Germanicus would not be swept under the rug, as had been done after Agrippina's brother, Posthumus Agrippa, was assassinated. This time, Agrippina would ensure that justice was served. Piso and Plancina would pay for their betrayal, and Agrippina would not rest until all of Rome demanded retribution. Once more, sitting dutifully at his bedside, and surrounded by her children and Germanicus's advisers, Agrippina prepared to say goodbye to her husband. With the pallor drained from his face, and his skin glistening with fever, Germanicus opened his mouth, speaking through parched lips. "Avenge me," his voice cracked, "and bear witness that I have always remained loyal to my father, Tiberius." One by one, Silius, Veranius, Marsus, Sentius, Severus, and the Vitellius brothers laid their hands on his, vowing to lose their own lives rather than fail to avenge his death. After their solemn oaths, they were dismissed, leaving only Agrippina and her children in the room. "For the sake of my memory," he implored, his words strained, "and for the safety of our 6 children, you must accept the cruel fate that has befallen us. I beg of you, soften the harshness of your character and your ambitions. When you return to Rome, do not offend those more powerful than yourself, especially Tiberius." As Agrippina wept on his chest, Germanicus closed his eyes, and then he was gone. He was only 33 years old. In that fleeting moment, a shift occurred, a profound metamorphosis. Moments ago, the granddaughter of a god and the wife of Rome's next emperor, now Agrippina stood alone, a widow, with 6 children hanging precariously in the balance. Tiberius would now decide their fate, a man with another son, Castor, a Claudian son, whose ascent would succeed in forever completing the decades-long war to displace the Julian descendants of Caesar Augustus. The room, heavy with the mingled scents of sweat and herbal medicines, enveloped her like a shroud. Agrippina's gaze drifted from the lifeless body of her husband to her weeping children. Their small frames shook with grief. In that moment, she made a decision. Despite his deathbed pleas for caution and a softened temper, Agrippina resolved that she would not allow their legacy to fade into obscurity. The world would remember Germanicus, and Agrippina would ensure that her family's story continued, not in whispers, but in bold strokes, written across the annals of history.